It was kind of a personal thing. I had two close friends actually die, and was in a bit of my own kind of cognitive dissonance about what does this all mean and where do we go and what's the point of all this, um, and I had a friend come over that was kind of like, you should just really start asking questions, and I think you won't feel lost because there's a lot there for science-minded people if you feel like you have that want to look. And then I kinda made the decision, okay, like, I wanna answer some of these questions, like, what is consciousness? Where does it go? Why? Why do we have it? And, for many documentary filmmakers out there, we spend a lot of time developing something, often sometimes months, sometimes years, without before you ever even get paid, if you even do. So I thought, well, whatever I'm gonna work on next, I wanna spend my time becoming, hopefully, invested and really, like, thoroughly, almost an expert, if you will, and, like, in some of these areas around consciousness, and I didn't know where this would take me. I was just trying to find an answer that I needed to find, and I started reading books on reincarnation and simulation theory and remote viewing, like anything that I could get my hands on to try to understand. And then I came across the work of Dr. Powell, and it was really weird because it just hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, oh, this is it. Like whatever it is, it's here. And so met Dr. Powell, who had been researching like autistic savants, and through that work, she had heard from parents, look, I don't think they're just to have a photographic memory. I think a lot of these kids are reading our minds. And so she started testing that. And then, she's a brilliant scientist and had been, doing these tests. But then I started kind of working with the families, meeting the families, talking to the families. And that's where I sort of came to realize, okay, this is widespread, not over just America, but all over the world. And it goes back decades. It's not new. People have been reporting this, and it's even been published, going back to the 1950s, 1970s. So um, I kind of felt like, wow, this is the best kept secret in the world. If this many teachers and therapists and parents and siblings and religious leaders and scientists have been reporting this, it's just like how do we pull the dots together to in a way that people could believe it? Um, and that became my obsession about 4 years ago.
Well, that segues nicely into the spellers and spelling, because I think that's one of the questions I had was initially, if you're not familiar with your podcast, then
Mm.
what those two things are. So can you explain for the
Yeah.
viewers when you're talking about spelling, what you actually mean
Yeah.
and who the spellers are? Because we're going to talk about them some more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I quickly started to gather when talking to parents, actually it's interesting because a lot of, some of this has been documented in people who were able to speak, but the majority of the people that I was coming across had children who were non-speakers, usually diagnosed with something called apraxia, which is a mind-body disconnect, right? So your body is not doing what your mind wants it to do, which is can be really frustrating. And for people with apraxia, fine motor skills are really difficult. So something like sign language would be very hard. Something like drawing could be really hard. Writing could be hard. But someone along the way figured out that pointing to letters on a letterboard or something like that is a gross motor skill. So people with apraxia can learn through a lot of practice and training, really, of like how to like get your body to move and do the right thing. And there's a lot of kind of audio like audible coaching required in anything to do with apraxia, like, okay, make your foot, you go forward now. Okay, sit your body down now. Okay, come back up again now, like trying to give it a cue to when to go and when to stop and where to go. So with a bunch of training, a person can learn to spell their thoughts to communicate. Often that starts on big letter boards with just 3 or 6 letters. Then it gets to a smaller letter board, and for many individuals, that especially that we're working with in our film and also, podcasts and stuff, eventually are start to spell into a keyboard, like a QWERTY keyboard or into an iPad and are able to communicate independently. I always like to say just for families out there, though, who might be listening that, like, some children might never get to the QWERTY keyboard, right? They might always need, a letter board or that type of thing, and that's fine. I think the most important thing is that people are communicating and, getting out of what many non-speakers call their silent prison of not being able to even say what they want for dinner, you know?
I watched some of your films, and it's interesting how it's a it's like they kind of some of them throw their hand. You can see how
Yeah.
much effort it requires to control their
Mhm.
body. So it must be pretty amazing for them to go from that sort of real basic movement to actually be able to then work with a keyboard. So have you seen many spellers that have graduated all the way down to a keyboard?
Yeah, yeah, quite a few actually, and it's quite remarkable. Like with the telepathy tests that we did in the film, um, we were working with spellers that were in a separate room from the person that was sending, the telepathic cue, and it's just really cool, watching spellers who have gotten that much body control that they can type right into a computer keyboard. Akil, who is in the telepathy tapes episode 2, like he can just boom, 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 spell right into an iPad. One thing that is really interesting is I've met some spellers who will need to spell out first on a letterboard and then like because it's like almost like the motor memory, and then from there they can go and spell into a keyboard. So, I feel like they always say if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I'd say that's true for non-speakers with apraxia as well. Like everyone's different. And that's why coaches and spelling teachers and speech pathologists become really important here because having the right ethos of like really patiently figuring out what's going to work for someone is so important. There's a communication language teacher who has her own clinic. Her name is Maria in Chicago. She's brilliant. And the way she spends time for each of her students, like she's figured out that some students want like kind of sticky tape behind each letter so that when they hit the letter, there's like a feedback loop, like boom, it like, kind of sticks to you. Some people want to put a pencil right through a letter. Some people want like dangly stuff on the letter so that when it goes through it feels really concrete. Like this is the letter, right? You're not just somewhat poking it. You're making it very clear the letter you want. So everyone's different. It's just figuring it out how to help someone get out of their, to be able to communicate this way.
There's an idea there for an inventor, isn't there? Because it's like a haptic feedback that you have on your phones. It's not actually a
Yeah.
button being pressed. It's because it's haptic feedback. It's just giving you
Hmm.
back some electricity. Or you can
Yeah.
imagine a big board that does the same kind of thing. When they touch it, it kind of gives them that. It's sort of
Yeah.
electronic, but not actually mechanical.
Well, it's
Um,
cool too because like in the film we watched this spelling coach. His name is Austin, and it's kind of cool seeing like a male coach because I think so often people just think of like women in these roles of like special education and teaching in general. And Austin has worked with so many non-speakers, and it's really cool watching him do it because he has the whole process of starting with these big letter boards and going smaller and smaller and smaller. And he talks about a battery kind of forming sometimes between the speller, the coach, and the letterboard, that there's like some sort of like, you know, like cool energy that forms. And what was cool is at one point we asked one of the non-speakers, not in the podcast originally, but who's in the film, his name is Winston. Um, one of his spelling coaches asked him, if we could have like an AI robot holding the letterboard for you, could you do it as well? And he said, no, because the shared of tension of a human sitting here helps to pierce my apraxia. So there's something beautifully rich about having another human being grounding you with intention and love and patience, just sitting there, um, waiting for you to speak and helping you.
that's amazing that he said that in that way.
Hmm.
That's that kind of language. Now, I've heard you mention this before on the podcast, like the particular style of speaking and language that spellers use is there's something quite unique about it. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and it's again like a huge population, so you can't point ever. It's hard to say like a big broad thing, but there's many parents and teachers who we've worked with or interviewed who have said that their spellers will communicate in this way that feels very like Old English, almost like poetry, with words that you don't typically we wouldn't I mean, I wouldn't typically use, or the coach or the parent might say, like, "I would never use that," they'll say, like, "This person was downtrodden and crestfallen at the sight of the dawn breaking from their blood." Like this beautiful sentence where it's like, "Okay," Um, and yeah, and it's really beautiful. It's almost this, um, eloquent, formal language that sometimes doesn't even, adhere to the same language patterns, that or slang that I would use or someone else might use. The other thing that's, interesting too, like there's this dad, Scott, he's in the podcast, he's also in the film, his daughter, Lily, is a non-speaker, and he said, so often I'll just want a short answer from her, like, "Do you wanna go biking or have dinner?" And, just come on, bike or dinner. And she'll start smelling like, well, it's a beautiful day today. And though I would like to go biking, a walk would feel great. And he's like, just that, you know? And, and so I think there's this real intention around what's being said, how you say it, not mincing words. And you have to be very patient because it can take, 2 minutes to get a sentence out that for us would take a few seconds.
Yeah. So I just want to backtrack a little bit because obviously, when you started down this road, being a scientific person, as you mentioned before, you would have had some doubts about what you were going to find out. So, was there a moment where you thought, "Okay, this is real, and all my doubts have been erased, and now I can talk about this with confidence"?
Yeah, I mean, it was really a long journey because, first it was like having Dr. Powell talk about this and kind of reviewing her tests, which were really, really concrete and bulletproof. And it just felt so hard to believe. So then I called her camera guy who set up the original cameras for her like scientific tests. He wasn't filming it for any reason except for just science. And he was like, it was so mind-boggling. He's like, there's no way anyone could cheat. There's no way anyone could see anyone that he was just so startled by it all. And then, I was able to witness a lot of that on my own with the tests, but pretty quickly the tests become irrelevant because you're talking to parents who are all having the same exact situations, which it was there before spelling. It doesn't have to do with, I mean, they find out the extent of it once their child starts communicating. But in many cases, the parents will have the same idea or the same experiences. Like, I'll just be sitting there thinking, "I want nuts," and next thing you know, like, my child will come in with nuts or like, "I need my purse," and they find that or